الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. My name is Sophia, I'm your host. The aim of Let the Quran Speak is to help you gain deeper insights into Muslims and Islam, as it is practiced here and in other parts of the world. In this episode, the word sincerity, or ikhlas in Arabic, is mentioned many times in the Quran. Why is sincerity so important? And what does it mean to be sincere? We'll answer those questions soon, but first, domestic violence against women. It's a problem that transcends race, culture, color, and religion, and it affects both Muslims and non-Muslims. There's a growing realization within Muslim communities that something must be done to eradicate domestic violence. Why does domestic abuse occur amongst Muslims? And how can we work collectively to prevent abuse before it occurs? With me to discuss this topic, Dr. Shabir Ali, President of the Islamic Information Center. Dr. Shabir Ali, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
Now, I understand that there's a campaign that Muslims are waging in the West against domestic violence. You're part of that campaign. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that campaign.
Yes, this is an international campaign, in fact, and it's not limited to Muslims. It's happening all over the world, in Australia, in the United Kingdom. It's called the White Ribbon Campaign to end violence against women and girls, and this is actually championed by men. Who feel that this has gone too far. Women and girls should not be the victims of violence, especially violence that's inflicted upon them by men. Some of the statistics are alarming. In Canada alone, we find that in 1 year, some 427,000 women had reported some sort of attack on them. Every day in Canada, we learn of somebody being physically or sexually abused, and often women are attacked by or abused by persons who are close to them. It could be a boyfriend, a person that they're sharing house with, and sometimes even a family member. Mm-hmm. Muslims in particular should be concerned about this issue, and for this reason in the GTA area, some Muslims started up Muslims for White Ribbon. Their website, muslimsforwhiteribbon.ca, shows many imams in the GTA signing a document. Their pictures can be seen online, pledging that we want to eradicate domestic violence. And a khutbah has been delivered throughout Canada from many pulpits in mosques by imams, similarly denouncing violence in a coordinated effort to get the Muslim community more aware of this problem.
Mm-hmm. What sort of impact do you think domestic violence has on the Muslim community?
Of course, to begin with, we displease God when this happens in our community. But at the practical level, we see that sometimes among the women who are found in women's shelters, some are Muslim women. They are victims of violence within their families.
In fact, there's a statistics that I want to share. 12 to 18% of Muslim women in the United States experience physical abuse, and 30 to 40% experience emotional abuse. This was a study done, published on Sound Vision, the website Sound Vision.
Yes, and of course the statistics for Canada should not be expected to be very much different from that. So it is a problem that affects all of us. Recently, a story has been much publicized, the story of a man who stabbed his wife several times, and his excuse was that she was following a modern Western lifestyle. Well, there's no excuse for killing, because this is one of the deadly sins that a Muslim is warned against again and again in the Quran and in the life example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So if Muslims inflict violence on their women, this is a terrible problem. In the Quran, we read God's instructions that we are to keep our wives in ma'ruf, in kindness, or sarrihuhunna bil ma'ruf, or let them go freely in kindness as well. So either keep them in kindness or let them go freely in kindness. وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ دِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا, and do not hold on to them, harming them, so that you transgress the limits. And then the verse keeps going on and on. وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا, do not take the verses of God to be a joke, as if men who inflict violence on their women are actually playing around with God's revelation and taking it as a joke. And it continues to say, whoever does this only does harm to his own soul, fear God, and so on. So it is something that is taken very seriously in the Book of God, and something that Muslims should take very seriously.
There's also a very famous verse that's recited at many marriage ceremonies, which is that God created mates for individuals to live in tranquility with each other.
Yes, those who are interested can read the verse in the 30th chapter, Surah Ar-Rum, in the 21st verse, where it says that God has created, these are among His signs, He has created for you mates from among your own kind, so that you can dwell with them in tranquility. And so the vision created here is a family atmosphere of peace, of tranquility, of happiness, or of sakina, where people are at ease.
And the verse continues and talks about love and mercy as well.
Exactly. It says that God has put love and mercy between you. So the relationship should be characterized by love and mercy, and certainly violence counts against this. In the second chapter of the Quran, the 187th verse, husbands and wives are described as garments for each other. And just as garments protect us and guard our privacy and keep us safe from the elements, this is how the relationship should be, and it's mutual, both husbands and wives being garments for each other according to this passage. In the 4th chapter, in the 19th verse, men are encouraged to live with their wives, they're commanded to live with their wives in kindness. The verse continues to say that if you find that you dislike your wives, then perhaps you dislike a thing in which God has placed abundant good. Commenting on a similar vein, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is reported to have said that if you dislike something about your wife, then you should find something that you do like about her, because of course everybody's got pluses and minuses. So you should look for the pluses in the other person.
His own example was one of an individual who treated the women in his life with respect and dignity. Exactly.
In fact, it is noted in the tradition that he never struck a woman. And he was always kind to his family members. Anas, who lived with him for many years, reported that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was the most kind of all men to his family members. And this is how we should be as well as followers of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
So how do you think we deviate from this what seems to be the norm, the Prophet's norm? How do we move away from that and exercise domestic violence, domestic abuse within the household?
Domestic violence, as I've said, is a widespread phenomenon. It's not limited to Muslims. It seems that men generally feel they have power in a relationship, and they exercise that power in a tyrannous manner on women. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, in fact, has advised us against all of this. First of all, there is the widely known a report that the dua, or the supplication of the person who is oppressed, it reaches up to God instantly and is accepted. So one has to be aware of the prayer of these women who are being oppressed. And many men sometimes respond in anger, and things happen in a relationship, things are said, sometimes insults are thrown, harsh words are exchanged, and so on. So what does the man do? Sometimes he uses his hand, he commits acts of violence. In this
so part
state
of it is
anger.
about controlling one's anger.
Exactly. And the advice of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is that we should in fact control our anger. He said that the strong man is not one who wrestles another to the ground, but the one who controls his anger. An imam in the United States delivering a khutbah on the same theme said we should think about the situations that happen in our lives. Suppose you're stopped by a police officer and he starts to tell you some harsh words. Now you may feel instinctively you need to respond and to react, but you don't. Because you realize that the consequences could be severe for you. Well, in a similar way, you're in a family relationship, you hear things from your family members, you feel you need to react, but don't react with violence, because if you do, then the consequences with God will be severe.
Mm-hmm. Do you think in part this sort of attitude arises out of a sense that the women in one's life may be insubordinate, or maybe they're to serve a man or something like this?
Some such cultural expectations feed into the problem, and we should in fact go back to the Quran to see what cultural expectation the Quran in fact demands of us. The Quran requires of Muslims to be thinking people, for them to see the broad aspects of life, to learn from all of history, and also to understand their contemporary situation, and to see the direction that the Quran is chalking out for people. There's an interesting verse in the 228th verse of the second chapter, where it says, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and women have rights equal to their responsibilities according to what is fair and just. So we should think about this very carefully. Not enough attention has been shown to this verse. It shows that women do have very important rights as much as they have responsibilities. And we cannot cultivate a culture that always blame women for things. You know, a man is stressed out at work and he comes home and he takes it out on the wife. Or, you know, things don't go very well in his life and he's blaming the wife and he's taking out his anger on the wife. All of these are acts of injustice which the Quran is against, and which as Muslims we should be against as well.
Okay. Very quickly, what sort of advice would you give to someone who's experiencing domestic violence? One
of the problems we face is that very often the Imam says to the woman, be patient and pray and hope that he will change. Mm-hmm. But we cannot leave women in situations of danger. We need to encourage women to speak up for themselves, to seek help from whatever agencies and protections are available for women in such situations. And of course, the options are many, and women do need to take a proactive step in protecting themselves and maintaining their safety.
Thank you for that, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, we look at the question of sincerity.